Hi, everyone. I'm going to share a little story today. I love sharing stories with you because I think that it's so much easier for us to grasp concepts about what's going on inside of us when we can have a picture of it in a real world scenario. So, today I want to share with you this story. About a year ago, I was at a women's conference and they were doing a demonstration on self defense, physical self defense. And it was so fascinating to me because what they did was they had two women stand on opposite sides of the room. And the woman on this side was told she was to run towards the woman on this side of the room as fast as she could until this woman put her hands up to tell her to stop. This woman was informed that she should put her hands up when she felt that the woman coming from this side of the room was getting too close to her personal space. So the first time she did this, it was so interesting because the woman over here went running full force to the woman over here. This woman put her hands up when she was probably about 6 feet away. So a pretty good distance. She had a pretty good distance. They had him reset and do it again, still about 6 feet away. And again, a little closer. And again, now the woman over here was stopping her about 4 feet away. They did it again. And every time this woman ran to this woman, the boundary got a little smaller. She was putting her hand up a little later, and a little later, and a little later. She got comfortable with how close this woman was getting to her personal space. And it struck me so hard that this is something that we do with our emotional and energetic boundaries as well. We might start out with a firm boundary with someone, but over time, start to let them creep in to edge to us just a little bit more. And there are reasons why we do that. A lot of times it is because we get comfortable with that person. And then we kind of get to the point where we just don't want to upset them. But when that happens, it's typically because there's something inside of us that has this sort of people-pleasing need, that we need other people around us to like us, to be happy with us, to not upset the apple cart, so to speak. So most often when we're letting people press in on our emotional and energetic boundaries, it's because we've got something going on with this people pleasing. It's often a codependency. We feel such a strong need to be liked, to have validation from those around us, that we will sacrifice ourselves in order to have that kind of peace within the relationship, but not peace within ourselves. We are sacrificing the peace within ourselves, because what happens is we start to feel overwhelmed and to have difficulty managing our time because we start taking on way too many responsibilities. If this sounds like you, please, please, please take a note that this might be something you're doing. I know so many women and men too. Honestly, this is not specific to men or women. I know so many people who take on one thing after another. And, even if it's something small that someone's requesting of them, it becomes a much bigger thing, because when we're adding one small thing to another small thing to another small thing, we get to the point where we are so overwhelmed, it's like up to here, right? And when that happens, we begin to get resentful, right? It might be someone who's repeatedly doing this to us, or we might kind of get a sense of just feeling used and taken advantage of in general by everyone. But the interesting thing is we are allowing it, right? We're allowing it because we haven't set that boundary. We have not put our hand up and said, no, you cannot come into my emotional or energetic space, right? So just like our physical space that we have, is important. It's important to keep that space from others. It's also important to keep that space emotionally and energetically, because if not, we end up burned out. We'll end up with this kind of boundary burnout, right? We have just too many requests on our time. It can happen in our workplace. It can happen with our friends. It can happen in our home, where if we think we just have to do everything and let our kids do whatever, and we'll just take on all the extra work, or not ask our spouse to help, or whatever it might be. Even when help is offered, sometimes we will say no, because this drive inside of us to please and to not really have these needs becomes so strong and overpowering. It's almost to the point where if these two women who were running across the room, right, to set this boundary, it's almost like the woman over here eventually just puts her arms down and goes, it's okay. You know, if you find yourself feeling like you have been taken advantage of and you are so overwhelmed with all the things you have to do, and you kind of go through this list of things that you kind of have on your plate, and if it is so much, but also things that could be set aside or could be delegated or said no to, then there's a very strong chance that this is what you're doing. The visual is that you're just putting your arms down at your side and saying, I'm here, just come and, take whatever time and energy you want from me. But you don't have to do that. You can set healthy boundaries with those around you. And the way to do that is going to be to set your priorities, right? So we've got to set our priorities about what we are willing to accept from others, as far as how much time we're willing to give, right? How much time are we willing to give to others? We have to decide, is this something that is someone else's need or a want? When it comes to things with our family, yes, there are things that are needed to be done, that we need to do to care for our family. But then there are things that are also wants that they could maybe help or do themselves. And so setting up this boundary to ask, you know what, you can take responsibility for some of these things yourself. That's a good test for us. It's a good test for us to say, you can do some of that and see how you feel about it. If it starts like kind of twinging something inside you that's like, oh no, I don't feel okay with this, asking yourself why. Why do I not feel okay with this? Is it because I'm afraid they're not going to care about me? Is it because I think that they won't like me? What is it that is going on within yourself as this kind of boundary is being set up? That's going to give you some clues about why you've been doing this in the first place, right? So if we can assess what we feel with someone when it's happening, it's going to really help us understand what it is we need to change. And practicing saying, this is something that you can do yourself, or I can't do this, I don't have time to do this, is okay. It is totally okay. Setting good boundaries, with everyone, not just within our home, but with others, and even in our workplace. If we are taking on work for others and just kind of continuing to do it over and over again, there will be this standard set that says that you're always going to be able to take on more and more and more, and you will end up feeling that boundary burnout. It's going to get intensified. It's not going to get better until we stand up for ourselves, use our voice, and say, I do not have more time to do this. So often too, people who struggle with boundaries are those who say they find it hard to relax. And because there's something inside that's saying, I have to keep doing things in order to feel loved and accepted and worthy. If you think you always have to be cleaning your house in order to feel worthy, or to always be helping someone fix something, or go out and take on another committee or whatever it might be, and taking away that time for your self-care and relaxation, then there's a very good chance that you are looking outside yourself to feel worthy, to feel validated. So these are things to be aware of. We need to be aware of, what is it that we are doing that is starting to make us feel like we're putting our arms down at our sides? Who's this happening with? How can we change it? So just kind of being aware of those things is going to start helping you open your eyes to the places where your boundaries are being pressed in on. And when those boundaries are pressed in on, you're going to feel it, right? And you've probably been feeling it already, and it might even be something that you weren't aware of, just having this kind of continual overwhelm. I've seen lots and lots of people with this sense about them that, I just always feel like there's not enough time in the day. That is because we have filled the time with things that maybe we don't need to be filling the time with. And we need to prioritize. We need to look at what is a need for us, what is important for us ourselves too. We are just as important and valuable as all these other things that we're committing to. So starting to really get those priorities straight, setting up those boundaries, saying no when we need to, being able to do that is going to really help you realize that your validation does not come from outside sources. We have to feel that complete and wholeness within ourselves. You don't need to keep overfilling your time, overfilling your days to be worthy. You're already worthy. Hear me say that. You are already worthy. So this is just a little bit about boundaries. We could probably go on about boundaries all day long. Honestly, there are so many different ways and places that our boundaries are pressed in on. But just for the sake of starting to recognize where it is that you are struggling with boundaries in your life, just think about that visual. How comfortable have you let yourself get with someone pressing in on your boundary? Just thinking of that visual, because what happens is over and over, it's going to get stronger and stronger. You're going to be putting your arms down in that visual. You're putting your arms down because you have gotten so used to the requests coming and your response always just being, okay, I'll do it. So just be aware that you're doing that and start to notice. And just notice that when you start to say no and put your hand back up, setting that boundary, the change that you start to feel in yourself. And remember, once again, you're worthy and good enough already just as you are. Thanks so much for watching. You can learn more about boundaries and other things in my book, Free from the Cage, a guide to take you from overwhelmed to peace. You can find it on my website at jennifer-riggs.com. And there's actually a chapter on boundaries in here and a whole lot of other resources for helping with emotional and mindset changes, and lots of other information on my website as well. So again, jennifer-riggs.com. You can get Free from the Cage. It's a great place to be, free from the cage. Thanks again so much for watching. Take care and talk to you soon.